Yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha are often described as some of the best foods for your gut. But what makes fermented foods different from ordinary foods? Do they all contain probiotics? And can something considered healthy still make you feel bloated or uncomfortable? As a naturopath, I see fermented foods as valuable, but they need to be chosen and introduced according to the individual. In this video, I will explain how fermentation changes food, why fermented foods may support digestion and the gut microbiome, and when you may need to be careful. Fermentation is a natural process in which microorganisms, such as bacteria or yeast, transform components of food. For example, some microorganisms convert sugars into acids, gases, or alcohol. This process has been used for thousands of years to preserve food, change its flavor and texture, and sometimes improve digestibility. Milk can become yogurt or kefir. Cabbage can become sauerkraut or kimchi. Soybeans can become miso or tempeh. Tea can be transformed into kombucha. Fermentation is not a new health trend. It is a traditional way of preparing and preserving food that is now being studied through the modern science of the microbiome. This is an important distinction. All fermented foods are produced with microorganisms, but not all fermented foods contain living microorganisms when you eat them. Some are heated, baked, filtered, or pasteurized after fermentation. For example, sourdough bread is fermented, but baking kills the live microorganisms. Some commercial sauerkraut and pickles are pasteurized to extend their shelf life. Even when a fermented food contains living microorganisms, it should not automatically be called a probiotic. The scientific definition of a probiotic requires specific live microorganisms, provided in an adequate amount with a demonstrated health benefit. Many traditional fermented foods have not been tested at the strain-specific level required to meet this definition. However, they can still offer valuable nutrients and compounds produced during fermentation. Some fermented foods provide living microorganisms that temporarily interact with the digestive environment. They may not permanently colonize your gut, but they can still interact with your existing microbiome while passing through the digestive tract. In a small randomized trial, researchers compared a high-fiber diet with a diet rich in fermented foods. The fermented food group showed increased gut microbial diversity and reductions in several inflammatory markers. This was an interesting result, but it does not prove that every fermented food will produce the same benefit for every person. The effects depend on the type of food, the microorganisms present, the amount consumed, the rest of the diet, and the individual's health. From my naturopathic perspective, variety is often more useful than relying on one product every day. During fermentation, microorganisms begin breaking down certain components of food. A good example is yogurt. The bacteria used to make yogurt break down some of the lactose in milk. This is one reason some people who struggle with ordinary milk may tolerate yogurt better. Fermentation can also alter carbohydrates, proteins, and other food components. However, tolerance remains individual. Someone who reacts to milk protein may still react to yogurt or kefir, even if the lactose content is lower. This is why I do not assume that a food will suit everyone simply because it is fermented. The potential value of fermented foods does not come only from living bacteria. During fermentation, microorganisms produce acids, peptides, and other biologically active compounds. They may also change the availability of certain nutrients and reduce some components that interfere with nutrient absorption. This means a fermented food may still have nutritional value even when the microorganisms are no longer alive. For example, sourdough bread does not provide live bacteria after baking, but the fermentation process has already changed the dough. This is why we should not judge fermented food only by asking whether it contains live cultures. There are many fermented foods you can include in your diet. Natural yogurt may provide protein, calcium, and live cultures. Kefir is a fermented milk drink containing a community of bacteria and yeasts. Sauerkraut is traditionally made by fermenting cabbage with salt. Kimchi usually combines fermented vegetables with seasonings. Miso and tempeh are made from fermented soybeans. Kombucha is a fermented tea, although some commercial varieties contain considerable added sugar. Not every product sold as fermented is nutritionally equal. Always examine the sugar, salt, additives, processing, and portion size, not only the health claims on the label. When choosing fermented food, I recommend checking several details. For yogurt or kefir, look for a plain, unsweetened product with clearly identified live cultures. Avoid turning a potentially healthy food into a dessert by choosing products with large amounts of added sugar. For sauerkraut or kimchi, check whether the product is refrigerated and whether the label states that it is unpasteurized or contains live cultures, if live microorganisms are what you want. Also, check the salt content, particularly if you have high blood pressure, kidney problems, or have been advised to limit sodium. With kombucha, check the added sugar and serving size. Kombucha is not a replacement for water, and drinking a large bottle every day is not necessary for good gut health. You do not need to begin by eating several fermented foods at every meal. If you have a sensitive digestive system, start with a small amount. For example, try 1 or 2 tablespoons of sauerkraut with a meal, or a small serving of plain yogurt or kefir. Observe your digestion, bowel movements, skin, energy, and general comfort. If you tolerate the food well, you can gradually increase the portion or introduce another type. I prefer this individual approach to forcing yourself to eat a large amount because an influencer described fermented food as a miracle cure. More is not automatically better. Some people experience more bloating, gas, abdominal discomfort, or changes in bowel movements after introducing fermented foods. This may happen when the amount is increased too quickly or when the digestive system is already sensitive. Certain fermented foods may also contain histamine and other biogenic amines. A person who is sensitive to these compounds may report symptoms such as headaches, flushing, itching, nasal symptoms, digestive discomfort, or a rapid heartbeat. However, these symptoms are not specific to histamine, and self-diagnosis can lead to unnecessary food restriction. If you suspect a reaction, keep a careful food and symptom diary and discuss it with a qualified healthcare professional. The goal is to identify your individual tolerance, not to remove every fermented food without assessment. People with irritable bowel syndrome, suspected SIBO, or significant digestive sensitivity may not tolerate every fermented food. For example, garlic and onion commonly used in kimchi may trigger symptoms in people sensitive to particular fermentable carbohydrates. Kombucha may also be poorly tolerated by some people, depending on the ingredients and serving size. This does not mean fermented foods are bad. It means that the type, quantity, and timing need to suit the person. In naturopathic practice, I assess bowel habits, meal patterns, stress, sleep, medication, food reactions, and the history of symptoms before recommending large dietary changes. Fermented foods and probiotic supplements are not interchangeable. A probiotic supplement may provide identified strains in a measured dose. A fermented food provides a much more complex combination of nutrients, microbial products, and, in some cases, living microorganisms. A supplement may be selected for a particular purpose, while fermented foods can be included as part of a varied diet. Neither option is automatically better. If probiotics have ever increased your bloating or digestive symptoms, watch my previous video. Can probiotics make bloating worse? A naturopath explains. It will help you understand why the strain, dose, and additional ingredients matter. Fermentation has a long history, but food safety still matters. If you prepare fermented foods at home, use a reliable tested recipe, clean equipment, appropriate salt concentration, correct storage, and good hygiene. Discard food if you notice obvious spoilage, an unusual appearance, or an unpleasant odor that is inconsistent with the recipe. People who are pregnant, severely immunocompromised, or medically vulnerable should seek professional advice about unpasteurized products and home-fermented foods. Natural does not mean risk-free. Safe preparation is part of a healthy approach. From my naturopathic perspective, fermented foods can be a useful part of a healthy diet, but they are only one part. Your gut microorganisms also need appropriate fiber from vegetables, fruit, legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains, according to your tolerance. Sleep, stress, movement, medication, and your overall dietary pattern also influence digestive health. You cannot repair a poor diet simply by adding a spoonful of sauerkraut. Begin with the foundations. Introduce fermented food gradually and observe how your body responds. Fermented foods matter because the fermentation process transforms food. Some provide live microorganisms, while others offer nutrients and fermentation-derived compounds. Even when the microbes are no longer alive, they may support microbial diversity, improve the digestibility of certain foods, and add variety to your diet. But they are not a cure for every gut problem, and they are not suitable for everyone in the same quantity. Choose good quality products. Start with a small amount and listen to your body. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more practical, science-informed natural health education. Next, watch my video, Can Probiotics Make Bloating Worse?, to learn why a probiotic supplement may sometimes increase digestive symptoms. You can also explore my course, Heal Your Body Naturally, where I explain how food, digestion, stress, sleep, hormones, and lifestyle work together. The links are available in the description. And tell me in the comments, what fermented foods do you eat, and have you noticed any difference in your digestion?